Everyone. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the second meeting with the 14th Ward Democratic Committee with Common Pleas judicial candidates. This evening, we welcome participants from many other committees and across the city and county. This year, I want to remind people that there are 8 openings on the Court of Common Pleas. During this meeting, all participants are muted and cameras are turned off. Candidates will have 3 minutes to speak and then 4 minutes to answer your questions. Their completed questionnaires are posted at the link at the top of the chat. Post your questions for each candidate in the chat. We have a tight schedule, so post your questions quickly so we can avoid a time lag between their presentations and your questions. Leanne Younger, the Pittsburgh Democratic Committee Chair, will watch the chat and ask your questions to the candidates. We suggest you take some notes for yourself about each candidate to help you decide which 8 candidates across both of our Common Pleas meetings you want to vote for in the Allegheny County Democratic Committee endorsement meeting, which will be March 9th at the Pittsburgh Federation of Teachers Union Hall on South 19th Street. The recordings of both of these meetings will be posted at the 14th Ward Democratic Committee YouTube channel. They're helpful to review what you hear tonight and also to go back and review what you heard last week as you make your decisions. The video from last week's meeting has already been posted there. We take the selection of judicial candidates very seriously. And this year, with looming threats to vulnerable members of our community, deciding who sits in judgment of others is more important than ever. This is our opportunity to learn more about each candidate, their experience that's prepared them to sit in judgment of others, and their views that will shape their decisions. Our first candidate this evening is Ilan Zur, our own 14th Ward neighbor. Welcome.
Ilan, we'll be starting the timer soon. Reminder to folks to drop your questions in the chat, and a special reminder that even if you want to ask the same question to every candidate, we need you to drop it in the chat every time. So I'm gonna turn off my camera so we can all focus on you. Ilan, you have 3 minutes to tell us about yourself.
Okay, thank you. So my name is Ilan Zur, and I'm running for Court of Common Pleas judge. As Liz mentioned, I am a proud resident of the 14th Ward. I live in Squirrel Hill. Moved here in 1990 to go to Carnegie Mellon University, and I've stayed ever since. I am married to my wife, Lisa, and we have 3 kids who are 11, 9, and 7, and my mom, who recently turned 90, also lives with us. I'm running for judge because I care about my community and I am passionate about public service. It's what motivates me. And it's what has motivated me to do the career that I'm doing currently, which is a lawyer in the district attorney's office. I've been at the district attorney's office now for 26 years, and I specialize in the prosecution of violent crimes, namely homicides and other acts of gun violence. And for the past 12 years, I've been the supervisor of the Violent Crimes and Firearms Division. I've dedicated my career to seeking justice for our communities, and I believe we need judges who have the confidence, the integrity, and the experience to make the difficult decisions judges have to make, but also the temperament and empathy to treat everyone with dignity and respect. And to be clear, I do not view my job as a prosecutor with the goal of getting many convictions as I can or putting people in jail. In fact, based on my experiences in court, being in that courtroom where people are sentenced to significant sentences in jail, I see jail as an absolute last resort. I see my job, my role as a DA, to do the right thing. And that means if I don't believe in my case, if I don't think I can prove my case, well, then I don't proceed. And sometimes the right thing to do is not charge, or it's to withdraw the charges. Now, I wanted to just circle back on what I think you as voters should be looking for in your judicial candidates. And it's something I mentioned. It's the experience, the integrity, and the compassion. And with respect to the integrity, I believe all the candidates that are speaking before you have integrity and they are well-intentioned. but it's not enough. You need to have the experience to gain the proper perspective to make these very difficult decisions, such as bail decisions, verdicts, sentencing. These are all things that I've experienced over the course of a 26-year career that have formed the perspective I have that enabled me to make these decisions. Now, the other thing is the temperament and compassion. And I want to just share a story about that briefly. And it's a situation of a case I had about 20 years ago. As a younger DA, I was prosecuting a homicide, which was particularly heinous, in which two people were murdered, and a mom came home from work to discover this. I prepared the case, was ready to go to trial. And just mind you, this is about 20 to 30 witnesses I had to put together. It was the first or second day early on in the trial, and we were resuming after the lunch recess, and at which point the judge told me to call my next witness. Well, I had just found out that my lab technician was going to be about 5 to 10 minutes late. The courtroom was full of people, to include the family members of the deceased, and when the judge told me to call the next witness and I explained to him the situation, he just gave me a look that I'll never forget, and he said something that I'll never forget. And mind you, I was newer, I was pretty green, and he said to me, call your next witness or rest. Anyway, I see my time's up. My point is that the way that made me feel, I'll never make someone feel like that who ever appears in front of me. And that's a vow to you from
Thank
me.
you so much, Ilan. We're going to give you 4 minutes to answer questions. And the first question is this: what is your position on cash bail?
So with respect to the bail situation, I believe that if you have a system in which someone can pay money, two people similarly situated as far as charges, and one can pay money to get out, one cannot, well, I think that is an obvious injustice. So my position on it is that if decision for bail is made, it should be a release or no release. And that depends on whether that person is a danger to society. If they are, then it should be no release. If it's not, then there can be conditions. We can go to house arrest, alternative housing, or non-monetary. But I think those are the options here. And in that way, someone who can't afford it isn't unfairly penalized.
Thanks. Our next question is this: what is your preferred initial court assignment?
Oh, my preferred initial court assignment would equally, I'd say, criminal court and or family court with respect to doing juvenile dependency and delinquency. The idea of being in juvenile court where I can perhaps affect the lives of these young kids before they get to the point of, where I'm prosecuting them for murder is something that is very appealing to me. I just want to do what I can to improve our community and to make the system better. So criminal court or juvenile court for that matter, I would be very excited and pleased with either of them.
Great, thank you. Did you share with us your bar rating yet? If you haven't, could you please?
Sure, I'm highly recommended.
And what do you think is the most significant problem in Pennsylvania's justice system?
I think that the problem we're seeing now that is the racial disparity that exists at all levels. I think there's a research study that I'm up to date on that I've read about, and it's also from personal experience being in the system, and I could verify it's true. But there's a disparity at each decision point from the time of arrest all the way through to conviction. And so I think as a judge, it's incumbent on us to be aware of that. And as a judge, what you can do to make things equal and so that there perhaps is a very much fairer equal playing field is I have control as a judge accepting plea agreements. I have control as a judge for sentencing. So if I see a plea agreement that's proposed to me that seems to be unjust in that maybe a person of color is getting a different deal than someone who is not, then I can do something about it, and I can step in and I can reject that plea offer. And as far as sentencing, that's completely in my control as a judge, and I can make certain that there are no racial disparities as far as my sentencing go. And I sentence people based on their conduct and not who they are.
Great, thanks. Could you tell us about your proudest moment in your career thus far?
Yeah. And I think it's happened every time that I do a job for a family member. And I'll tell you, it just happened yesterday. Yesterday I had a case which ended up being a plea. It was a situation where the victim in this case was celebrating his birthday on the South Side, and through no fault of his own, an individual shot him 8 times, and that person is now paralyzed. And it sent ripple effects through obviously his entire family, community. And throughout the process, I was dealing with his sister, who was kind of the the voice for the family. And she started off with a position of distrust of the system. And I could tell from talking to her, and we're going back years at this point. It's been 3 years since this offense happened. And I've talked to her regularly. And so I sensed that initially. And over the course of time, I could tell that she finally did gain a trust for me. And yesterday, the defendant pled guilty. And today I received an email from her thanking me for my work and specifically stating how she has that distrust, but talking to me every day made her feel better and more comfortable. And so I really take pride in being able to do that for the people that I serve.
Thanks so much for your time today, Ilan. We're going to move forward now and bring our next candidate forward. That's Heather Schmidt Bresnahan.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Hello.
Welcome, Heather. You
Oh.
have 3 minutes to introduce yourself to us.
Hi, everyone. My name's Heather Schmidt Bresnahan, and I'm running for Court of Common Pleas because I do think that I have the experience, temperament, compassion, and values that I think are so important to have in a sitting judge. I've been an attorney for over 23 years, and I have over 30 years legal experience. I've concentrated my law practice in family law for the entire time. For those of you who may not know, family law includes such things as child custody, divorce, child support, spousal support, protection from abuse matters, among others, that are often very challenging and emotional for the parties. Many of, not all of you, will know somebody who is going to go through the family court system. But what you don't probably know is that the majority of judges who are elected will be assigned to the family division. We have the highest turnover rate of judges because the majority of them do not want to stay. And that is a disservice, and it's not fair to the litigants or the attorneys. That's why I think it's so important that when you're looking at candidates, that you look to somebody that is experienced and compassionate, because they may be dealing with your custody case or a child dependency case or so forth. To give you a little background on me, I'm born and raised in Dormont Borough. My mom's stay-at-home homemaker. My dad was a local Pittsburgh artist who designed the Iron City beer cans through the 70s and in the 80s. Both of my grandparents were blue-collar union workers. My grandmother was a political volunteer who championed tirelessly to get many Democratic candidates elected. I think I was canvassing for the first time when I was 4 or 5. I'm a hard worker. I worked through high school, and I worked full-time at the Allegheny County District Attorney's Office while I attended college and law school at night. It was working at the DA's office that gave me my love of the law, and I realized that I too could become an attorney. I had some really wonderful champions there. Judge Kim Clark was one of my greatest champions. I took the LSAT, enrolled in Duquesne, attended night school there. After I graduated from law school, I worked for a few reputable law firms, was a named partner, very fortunate over the years to have wonderful mentors. 2016, opened up my own shop. A few other things. I'm a former member of Dormont Borough Council, former Democratic Committee member of Dormont Borough's 5th District. I currently serve as a hearing officer, presiding over cases for the Allegheny County Retirement Board. I volunteer with Neighborhood Legal Services to help them with their PFA caseload. And I, like you, championed for all of our candidates this year and canvassed every weekend, and I volunteered for the PA Dems at the DNC and as a voter protection attorney. So I thank you, and I humbly ask for your support on March 9th.
Thanks so much, Heather.
Sure.
Our first question is, we understand that you just recently had your Bar Association interview. What was the outcome of that interview?
Recommended.
Okay, great. Thank you. And what, I think you've answered this, but what is your preferred initial court assignment?
Family court,
It's
100%.
pretty obvious.
Yes.
And can you tell us your position on cash bail?
So on cash bail, I think that there are many ways that, first of all, I don't think anyone should be thrown in jail unless they're proven guilty. But if somebody is a danger to society, then I don't think they should be given bail. But for other things, I think that there are many other things that can be done. I mean, there's ankle monitoring, there's treatment programs for people. So I think, and there's cashless bail. So I think that you shouldn't be thrown in jail unless, there's a reason why you shouldn't be let out.
Can you tell us the temperament that you think makes an effective judge?
Yes, definitely. So I think that with temperament, you need to have, first of all, everyone in a courtroom should be treated with respect and dignity, whether that's the attorneys, the litigants, the people working in the courthouse. I treat everybody equally all the time. So I think that in terms of temperament, it has to do with treating people with respect and fairly and with dignity. But also it's kind of, to give a short story, I came in with a client the one day, we were ready for a custody hearing and the judge come in and started, kind of, I don't have time for this today, da, 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 da. And to me, that's not the right temperament to be handling cases. That's not the right temperament for a judge.
Thank you. What is your thinking about freedom of religion versus freedom from religion?
I wouldn't say I'd say I'm a spiritual person, so I'm not a very religious person. I think that everybody has the right to worship however they choose or not worship however they choose, as long as it doesn't interfere with anyone else's life or with anyone, with anyone else's life or their beliefs. I think that everyone should just kind of go along with minding their own, staying in their own lane, basically.
Sure, thank you. Another question here is, what do you think is the most significant problem in Pennsylvania's justice system?
I'm going to have to agree with Elon in terms of minorities are arrested more frequently and they are given harsher sentences than most non-minorities. And I think that that is systematic throughout our system, and that's something that needs to be worked on.
Could you tell us your thought about, and you've got 40 seconds, how can a judge make a difference in that situation?
Well, I mean, I think judges can make a difference in many situations, but I think that every crime you have to look at the crime and you have to look at somebody's prior records or so forth. But I think that systematically, you just need to realize that these arrests or so forth might not be for valid reasons. You need to look at why they were arrested and what is the crime, and make sure that you're treating everyone in your courtroom fairly, regardless of color, anything, race, religion, color. Everyone should be treated equally and fairly at all times.
Thanks so much for your time, Heather. We're
Thanks.
going to move forward now and bring Anthony DeLuca forward.
Thank you. It's nice to see everybody. I am Anthony DeLuca. I actually ran for judge in the last 2 cycles. I was too late into the race to seek the endorsement in the first one. However, I did seek the endorsement in the last one. You may remember me. I had a full beard. My wife at the end of the last election cycle said, "That's it for the beard." So there is no beard any longer. I've had, in the last election, I finished second in the endorsement. I did have the Labor Council endorsement. And I finished second in the primary, and I had the opportunity to take a knee through the general election to support the nominee, Pat Sweeney, and I was proud to do that and show my loyalty to the party. A good Democrat is somebody who, cares for other people more than themselves and is willing to give of themselves to help others. And in my particular situation, the 2 things I'm proudest of in my career demonstrate those democratic principles. Number one, I'm extremely proud to have been involved in the part of the small team that implemented and developed mental health court here in Allegheny County. That actually was done from the DA's office. I didn't really enjoy putting people in jail. I was looking for other routes to be of service in that office. The opportunity came up to do that. And I remembered when that opportunity came up, seeing a young individual who was obviously having mental health challenges in the courtroom, struggling to express themselves. And unfortunately, a lot of people in that courtroom, including the judge, laughed. And I saw that person tear up, and it broke my heart. So I jumped at the opportunity to be involved in that process, and would very much be interested in having the opportunity to run treatment courts in Allegheny County and, to the extent possible, improve them. The other thing I'm very, very proud of is that I'm a union labor lawyer, and I fight every day for for better working conditions, wages, benefits, et cetera, for working people. And given our current climate, at least in the federal system, where the NLRB is under attack, and many of other things as well, there's not a single judge on the Court of Common Pleas who was a former union labor lawyer. And I think it's time to bring that experience to the bench, because we don't know what the future holds in our state courts. So I'm very proud of that. On a personal note, I have 3 children, 15, 14, and 11. My oldest son is a hockey player, but he's also the lead in various musicals at the high school and otherwise, and I'm very proud of that. My daughter, my youngest, she's a lacrosse player, and she also is involved in music and acting and so forth. My middle son is a sports only guy, but we're working on him. We're going to get him some more expansive knowledge, but that's just a little bit about me. And I would be happy to, of course, answer any questions. And thank you for having such a gentle timer. There's some places that have some pretty harsh buzzers. So thank you for the opportunity to talk to you guys tonight.
Great. Thanks. Thanks, Anthony. We've got a couple of questions here. First of all, did you share your bar rating with us?
So I am supposed to be rated on February 19th. However, of course, through the last 2 election cycles, I did carry a judicial rating, and I'm proud to say that through those cycles, I held a highly recommended.
Okay, and we've got a couple of questions here about your registration as a Democrat. We don't want to take a lot of time about this. It's a question about the timing of it. When did you join the party?
In my early 20s. I actually was born in rural Westmoreland County. My parents were always strong Democrats. I was a little bit of a rebel. Did not register as a Democrat, but always voted as a Democrat because I just wanted to tick my parents off. But I'm embarrassed that I was ever anything else. I'm a proud Democrat. I'm obviously a union labor lawyer, criminal defense attorney, and very loyal to my party.
Thanks. Thanks
Yeah.
for answering that. What would be your preferred court assignment?
So, the 2 things obviously that have been the focus of my career are labor law and criminal defense. So, as I had mentioned earlier, I would love to do treatment courts as a judge. I think I have the compassion and the understanding of those situations in order to help people through that system and make it a welcoming environment that people feel the opportunity to improve. So I'd love to be in criminal court in that regard, but I'd also like to be I would also love to be in civil court for the reason that, there are appeals in public sector labor relations where there are appeals from arbitration decisions, grievance arbitrations, interest arbitrations. And, often the judges have to be educated on those because they don't see them that often. And there's some interesting standards. I would love to be on that court and have the opportunity to say, hey, bring those kind of cases to me. Because then I'll understand where we're going from the beginning, and hopefully we can get to a quicker and more accurate result.
We have another question here about your thoughts about the freedom of religion versus the freedom from religion.
I mean, that's an interesting history in our country, right? I think probably, if you look back to the founders, they probably put freedom of religion to protect religion from government. But as it's evolved, and I think wisely so, we've also seen it the other way, where, in government, we should be free from religious influence in our laws and what's required of individuals and in our public spaces. And, I think it makes sense under those circumstances. And I think a society runs best when government is not focused on religion, but government is focused on the regular tasks of government. So I think there is that dichotomy. I think religion should also be protected from government, but I think more importantly in today's world and the way things have developed, it's that other element of protecting government from religion that's important.
Great. We have just under a minute left, and the question is, what do you think is one of the most significant problems in the Pennsylvania court system?
You know, I think it's inequity, and I'm not going to just completely reiterate the issue with racial disparity in our criminal justice system. It's there. We all know it. It needs to be taken care of. But that also is, you know, it's not always just race. It's economics, right? And so those that can afford expensive representation often have much better results, regardless of race. In the criminal justice system. And so a judge has to be mindful to make sure that that disparity is not affecting the ultimate sentencing and results in a case.
Thanks so much, Anthony. We appreciate your time tonight, and we're going to move forward now and bring our next candidate up, and that's Craig Stevens.
Thank you.
Sorry, we don't see Craig in the waiting room or in the participants list. The next person on the schedule is Carmen Robinson. Carmen, are you ready to start a few minutes early?
I am.
Awesome. Go ahead and turn on your camera.
1 second. Is it on? Okay.
Perfect.
Let me.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your flexibility.
Carmen,
Okay.
you've got 3 minutes to introduce yourself to us.
Okay, of course, I'm Carmen Robinson, and I like to say I have unequaled experience. I've been practicing law for 20 years, but before I started practicing law, I was a Pittsburgh police officer. I attained the rank of sergeant. I went to law school, and I went to law school because I felt at the time, even though I was on the ground floor of discretion, being able to decide to make the arrest or not to make the arrest, I still felt that I wasn't in the room or at the table where decision makers occur. So I went to law school and became a lawyer. And I have 11 years of law clerk experience. I clerked for the Honorable Max Baer, or I should say the late Honorable Max Baer. And then I clerked for Judge Woodruff, and then the Honorable Kim Clerk, who was the president judge. During that time, because it was in family division, I was allowed to practice in criminal law. Criminal law is my passion. I have tried some of the toughest cases. I've tried death penalty. I have a death penalty case currently right now, and I have 3 other first-degree murder cases. I believe that the Constitution is not really available as terms of rights to all people. And that's my passion, to make sure all of us Americans are afforded the benefits and the rights of the Constitution. I also am an adjunct professor at Duquesne School of Law, where I run a reentry program. These are pardons and commutations. Now, we don't seek pardons or commutations for anybody in prison. What we do is we try to expunge records. We try to pardon records or seal records, because oftentimes when you receive a record, it bars you from having housing, getting government loans, getting into school, that sort of thing. And what we do is try to help people reintegrate into society. And I want to say one of the things, or probably the most successful thing that I have done to date, is that my son graduated from Georgetown University, and I am so proud of that.
Congratulations, what great news. We have a question here, and we'll move right into questions if you're done.
That's fine.
Okay, great. Could you talk to us about your bar rating? You have 4 minutes to answer questions, but we don't want to spend all of your time on that. But we want to give you a chance to explain that first.
Well, I was extremely disappointed about my bar rating, and I was extremely reluctant to participate in the process, since I saw that the chairperson of that committee, who sort of leads the interview, was a deputy district attorney who was on my last 2 most important homicide cases. One was a death penalty, and the other one was first degree. And it was incredibly contentious. And I felt that he should have recused himself, but he wouldn't agree to do so. And unfortunately, the back and forth during the interview was mostly about those 2 cases, where he led it. There were 3 other former prosecutors that were currently attorney generals. And I just felt, I don't want to say it's unfair because I'm a big girl, but I felt like at the end of the day, they couldn't say I was unqualified because of the number of trials that I had, but they felt that I could not be fair to the district attorney's office because I have complained to the disciplinary board as well as outlined to judges about District Attorney Stephen Zappala being unethical in certain ways. And so I believe that that was really what was behind it. And I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you for taking time to explain that. We have a question in the chat here. While with Judge Baer, did you participate in the judicial bypass for women seeking abortions?
Well, not with Justice Baer, because by then he was on the Supreme Court, but I did participate with that with Judge Woodruff and Judge Clark.
Great, thank you. And do you have a preferred court section of the court to be assigned to?
Well, while I feel like being that 10 of my years was a law clerk in the family division, and I know it well, again, my passion is criminal court, simply because I started off as in law enforcement, and I see how the Constitution really doesn't provide everybody. I always say that the law is just words on a piece of paper, but the judge who interprets it brings it to life. And so I feel as though in criminal court, it's the area where I can make sure, or, you know, right now I'm representing people trying to make sure they have those rights. But as a judge, I could equally make sure that everybody who comes before me has those rights, which are absolutely important. And everyone that's an American should have those rights, as well as citizens who aren't.
We've got a little over a minute, and there are 2 questions I want to make sure we get to. One is, can you tell us what you think the temperament of an effective judge is?
Open-minded. You might say, what does open-minded have to do with temperament? If a judge is patient and open-minded, his temperament or her temperament will never be a factor. Usually, I've experienced when a judge already has preconceived notions and have already made up their mind, and they're moving us along quickly and not letting defense have their say so that their client can have their day in court, the temperament sort of flares because they're impatient. So if you're patient and you have an open mind, then your temperament will never be a problem.
Thank you. And take the last 30 seconds here to tell us about your bus company that serves disabled students.
Yes, I found a niche. There are a lot of school bus carriers out there, but I exclusively have commercial wheelchair vans. And I found out that there were people in the city of Pittsburgh, as well as Allegheny County and our surrounding boroughs, where their kids weren't going to school because they were so vulnerable. So these children aren't just in wheelchairs. They also, we were able to connect them to nurses and get them to school. We were able to give them a fuller life because they were spending most of their time at home. So the disabled school, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. I actually could listen to you talk about that all day, but we do have other candidates. Thank you for taking the time to explain that. Thank you for serving those students. Thank you for being here tonight. We're going to move forward and bring forth our next candidate. We're running a little ahead of time, but hopefully Amanda Green-Hawkins is in the room, in the Zoom room.
I don't see Amanda, but Bryan Neft is in the room. Bryan, can you turn on your camera?
And also Craig Stevens sent me a text that he's joined.
He has not joined. He must have a different link or something. Ask him if he is seeing the candidates speak. So Bryan, can you turn on your camera?
Bryan, I see that you're unmuted, and for the sake of our timing, if you're unable to turn your camera on, you're still welcome to take 3 minutes to introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. I got on 20 minutes early, and I'm wondering, oh my goodness.
Yeah, it made it a little stressful for folks. Sorry about
No worries. Good evening, everybody from the 14th Ward. I appreciate you being here tonight and to listen to all the candidates, including myself. My name is Bryan Neft, and I'm a candidate for the Court of Common Pleas of Allegheny County. Where do I start? I guess the first place to start is why I'm a lawyer in the first place. And the reason is because of my mom. What about my mom? When I was 16 years old, my mom decided she was going to give up her career as a home economics teacher and become a lawyer. And she enrolled in law school at Duquesne University, went to night school, and I drove her back and forth to her classes regularly. And she had study groups at the house where I got to hear the banter back and forth about the cases that were of the day that they were discussing. And I really decided that was for me. And I, got really excited when I started, to think about arguing cases and arguing points of law. And my mom graduated from law school in 1984, and I graduated 5 years after she did. And even to this day, we get together regularly. We talk about issues that we're working on, and we try to help each other wherever we can in the practice of law. I've been practicing now for over 35 years. Hard to think that it's been that long, but yes, it has been. And I practiced in the Court of Common Pleas of Allegheny County. I practiced in 35 other counties across Pennsylvania. I practiced in all of the appellate courts in Pennsylvania, and I practiced in West Virginia, Ohio, California as well. And I think, the breadth of my experience really lends well to my going on the bench and seeing what I can do there. My practice has been varied. I started my practice clerking for a judge on the Superior Court of Pennsylvania, the Honorable William F. Zircone, and he was a wonderful judge to learn from. He had a terrific demeanor, very soft-spoken, but when he was writing opinions, he was passionate about what he wrote, and I learned a lot from him. And while clerking for him, I reviewed cases from all of the different divisions that are in the Court of Common Pleas of Allegheny County: the Orphans Court, the Family Court, the Criminal Division, and the Civil Division. And I've practiced in all of those areas during my career. I've handled a number of different matters. I've been a general practitioner. I've been a commercial litigator, and I've done both plaintiff's work and defense work. One of the most memorable cases for me, which I talked about in the questionnaire, I believe, is case where I represented a family that was denied insurance benefits for a neonatal birth that occurred. And we got that thing resolved for them, and my attorney's fees paid at the same time.
The Oscar music has sounded. Thank you so much for taking the time to introduce yourself. You have 4 minutes to answer these questions. Let's start with whether you shared your bar rating with us.
My bar rating has not happened yet. I'm meeting with the Allegheny County Bar Association Judiciary Committee on the 19th, and I expect my bar ratings shortly after that.
Great. Your statement said that you may not seek the ACDC endorsement. Can you say more about that?
Well, I did ask for the endorsement, and apparently I was a day late on getting my request for the endorsement in, and so therefore I'm not eligible for the endorsement.
We have another question here about a change of party. I don't know the details around that, but is there something you'd like to tell us about that?
Yeah, I think I discussed it in the questionnaire. In 2004, Arlen Specter was running against Pat Toomey for the Senate seat, and I felt very strongly that I did not want Pat Toomey in the seat. So I switched my party affiliation to the Republican Party so that I could vote for Arlen Specter in the primary.
Thanks. What is your preferred court assignment?
I don't think that I have a preferred court assignment. I'm a team player, and I've been in all of the divisions of the court for one reason or another. In Orphans Court, I've handled litigation involving trusts and estates. In family law, I've handled that not only as a clerk on the Superior Court, where we deal with issues on appeal of equitable distribution of custody, of determination of parental rights. And I continue to do work pro bono representing victims in protection from abuse matters.
I've done criminal cases and I've done civil cases. I think I could work in any of the divisions. I think I would be good in any of the divisions, and I'm willing to work in any of the divisions.
Thank you. What do you think is the most significant problem in Pennsylvania's justice system?
I don't know that there is one that is of more significance than any other. I can tell you that, in my role in the Bar Association, we deal with those issues constantly. There are issues with regard to implicit bias. There are issues with regard to diversity. There are issues with regard to ensuring that people get justice that they deserve. And those are all areas that I've worked on in one form or another to ameliorate those issues. I could talk in more detail about them if you'd like. It's a lot. But for example, I've worked on gender bias. I serve on what's called our gender bias subcommittee of the Bar Association, which fields complaints from individuals that believe they suffered gender bias in the profession of law and by the judiciary. And we review their complaints, and with their consent, we go to the offending source and we tell them they're wrong, and we tell them how they're going to fix the situation.
Great. I'm gonna stop you there with that example because there's another question here, and we have just under a minute. Could you tell us your thoughts about freedom of religion versus freedom from religion?
So it's really what we're talking about is freedom of religion in terms of everybody having the ability to practice religion, as opposed to establishment, which primarily says the government cannot establish religion in any way, shape, or form. I consider myself like an old school Democrat that believes in civil rights and believes that everybody should be free to practice religion as they see fit, but it should never interfere in any way with anybody else's desire to practice religion their way. The government has no role in religion.
Thank you, Bryan. We've got 10 seconds left. Is there anything you want to say?
Thank you so much for having me. This is important work that you're doing. I believe that, my qualifications, my 35 years of experience lend to this, and I appreciate your support.
Thanks so much, Bryan. We appreciate your time. We've had to move some folks around. So as we say goodbye to Bryan, I believe Craig Stevens is our next candidate.
Take care, all. Thank you.
Dennis, I know your camera is on, but I'm looking at the master list from the control room, I guess.
No problem at all.
So, Craig, do you want to go next? Are you ready to get your camera and sound on? It looks like Craig left.
No, I'm seeing him on the screen right now. This is
Okay.
Liz. I see him on the screen and I heard him speaking.
I don't see him under his name in the list of attendees.
Craig, can you wave to make sure we have the right person? Can you wave your hand? Do you hear me?
I see Dennis Ferry with his camera on. I don't.
Oh, is that Dennis who's in front of
Yes.
us?
Yeah. Why don't we
Okay.
move forward with Dennis
Mhm.
and someone can track down Craig if they can. So Dennis, welcome. Sorry for the confusion. You have 3 minutes to introduce yourself to us.
Thank you. I'm Dennis Very, candidate for judge. I want to start with going back a little bit. My grandfather and namesake, Rocco Very, came over from Italy. He couldn't speak English. He literally laid the bricks in the Pittsburgh streets, and what we really thought was that he was laying the building the foundation for his future generations. My father was a past president of the County Bar Association. He passed away when I was 11. I was the youngest of 6. Only 5 years later, we lost my brother at 18. Watching my mother struggle and dealing with her grief and dealing with my grief and our grief helped form my personality and my temperament of patience and empathy. I think those are fine qualities for a judge. Like my dad, my emphasis is on equal justice. He's the president of the County Bar Association before he passed, and breaking down barriers that impede equal justice. He championed the Laurel Referral Service, and he wrote a book, The Legal Guide for the Family. Once again, breaking down legal barriers. That was introduced to me at a very young age. As a judge, this would be my driving force. I humbly submit that I am uniquely qualified to be one of the 8 endorsed Democratic candidates. as I would fill a gap in the current court as well as this talented candidate pool. You may ask, how do I do that? How do I distinguish myself? I have 30 years of extensive civil litigation experience. The scope of the experience and the diversity of my clients over the years have distinguished me from this talented pool. In the candidate pool, there are family division attorneys, criminal attorneys, clerks, legislator, attorneys that serve in the magistrate court. I am a civil litigator. That is what I've done for 30 years. That is my expertise. That is my passion. In 2023, approximately a third of all matters before the Allegheny County Court of Common Pleas were civil litigation cases. It only makes sense that an eminently qualified civil litigator candidate for judge fill one of those 8 open seats, especially when Judge Ward, who handled the complex civil litigation docket, has just retired. I have been blessed to represent a range of clients from the very large corporations fighting for individual rights and all those in between. Once again, a unique perspective indeed. I was raised in the South Hills. I know it's unheard of, but I crossed rivers, and for the past 20 years, I've been to McCandless. I'm a Notre Dame graduate. I worked my way through law school at night at Duquesne, where I worked at the county solicitor's office and was represented CYS even before I had a law license. I cut my teeth at a nationally recognized civil litigation firm, large matters, big clients. I went in-house, have that experience. I went back to firm practice where I handled smaller clients, protecting the rights of individuals, family businesses, communities, municipal clients, cities, townships, boroughs, school districts, a unique perspective indeed. I thank you for, I'm uniquely qualified civil litigator with 30 years of experience and with democratic values, and I would wish that you consider me for your endorsement.
Thanks so much, Dennis. You will have 4 minutes to answer questions here from the chat. Did you tell us your bar association rating?
Yes, recommended.
Recommended. Thank you. And I from what you said, I assume your civil court would be your preferred court assignment, but do you have a second?
Would be civil. I could do orphans. I did do an estate practice as well, but my sweet spot with my experience, I think it would be the best position for the court and for myself and for the citizens of Allegheny County where I could help the most would be civil division.
Thank you. There's a question here asking for you to discuss your change of party.
Sure. It's about 5 or 6 years ago with the political climate. I found myself having problems with where things were going. I found myself with my principles and were leaning more favorably towards the Democratic Party. I said in my response that I didn't walk towards the Democratic Party. I felt pushed that I had to go there. So that is the reason why I made the change.
Thank you. Tell us, please, how you feel about cash bail.
Well, cash bail, I understand now. I am not a criminal attorney. I have not practiced criminal law, but my understanding of the cash bail system is there's some inequities with it. There are some people who would just sit in jail because they can't afford to reach the cash bail. I think in situations where it would be safe for the public and that there should be alternatives to that, whether ankle bracelets, there are many other things that could be used, but cash bail should not be something that impedes someone just because of the fact of their economic situation. That's what I think.
Thank you. Tell us what you think makes the right and effective temperament for a judge.
I'm sorry. I'm at the office. I apologize.
It's okay.
I think the proper temperament, and I think I touched on it. I had when I was with the law department when I was going through school. I'd have days when I had 35 hearings in front of the late Justice Max Baer. What an example he set for me so early in my career. his temperament, I thought, was the ideal temperament. He was kind to everyone in the courtroom, and this was the juvenile court issues. He listened to everyone. He was respectful to everyone. He never raised his voice to everyone in the courtroom. There were children in the courtroom. He was kind to everyone, and he set a good tone and a good example. I think that is what you need as a temperament for a judge. I've practiced before courts when that is. I think it hurts the equal justice when a judge doesn't have the proper temperament. So I've been blessed with that example at very young in my career, and I've seen the other side of it. So
Thanks so much.
Yes.
We have 30 seconds left, and I want to get one more question in.
Sure.
How will you manage being assigned, if you're assigned to family court, which is where most new judges are assigned? We'll give you a little extra 10 seconds to answer that.
Sure. I mean, if I would be assigned to family court, just like in a litigation practice, a civil litigation practice, I've had cases in vast variety of different types of industries. You have to learn the industry. You have to know the industry better than sometimes your client to litigate a case like that. I would do the same thing if I would be placed on in the family division. I would learn that. I would learn from the judge or from the other judges, as well as the other lawyers that would be before me.
We appreciate your time tonight, Dennis. Thanks so much. We're going to move forward now and bring Amanda Green-Hawkins into the spotlight. Hi,
Thank
Amanda.
you.
You have
Hi
3
there.
minutes to introduce yourself to us.
Sure. Thank you. I am Amanda Green-Hawkins. Good evening, Democrats. I am running for Allegheny County Court of Common Pleas. And I'll start with something that Barbara Jordan said. What the people want is simple. They want an America as good as its promise. But we see birthright citizenship being at stake. We see voter suppression in our country. We see the right to choose at risk. And even though we have all of these rights in Black letter law, excuse me, we see that someone with the stroke of a pen, their own pen, can summarily say, no, these rights don't exist anymore. And that's why we need good judges on our court. And that's why I am running. Because as a woman of color, I know that every right I have is due to a statute or a constitutional amendment. And so I have obligation. I see it as an obligation to make sure that our constitutional democracy is protected and that the rights of the people to be heard in our judicial system are protected. I certainly have the experience, nearly a quarter of a century of legal experience, about 23 years of that with the Steelworkers Union, being in courts all around this country, federal and state level, as well as arbitration proceedings, mediation, and administrative agencies. And I also have been a mediator myself, helping parties resolve their disputes. I've been an adjunct professor of law at Pitt Law School, teaching labor law, building that next generation of union lawyers, I hope. And also I have been on county council, served 8 years there. So I certainly understand government. And I know we want people with integrity to do the right thing, even when no one's looking. And I certainly had to show that when I worked with Keep Our Republic, an organization that educates people about our election process and how we don't have to go to Washington, D.C. on January 6th to disrupt the transfer of power. And I did that work even though I was told I should hire my own private security because of the message that I was spreading. And I know we also look for people with a good temperament. And I certainly have that. Foundation of my belief is to treat everyone with dignity and respect. And I could not last in the labor movement for almost a quarter of a century without that being a foundational belief. And I certainly have a passion for the people. And I think that is shown in my community service work and also in my public service work. And 14th Ward Democrats, I humbly ask you for your support and I thank you for this opportunity.
Thanks so much. What is your preferred initial court assignment?
Well, my experience has been all civil, and I would probably be a natural fit there. However, I see this as I am volunteering, I'm stepping up to serve the people. And so really, I will go wherever it is that I am needed to serve the people. This is a privilege to be able to serve in this capacity. And so I can't say to the people, that, no, I don't want to go to that court. Wherever I'm needed, I will go.
Thank you. Did you tell us your bar association rating? Could you remind us if you already did?
I did not, because I have not been interviewed yet. My interview, because there's so many candidates, is scheduled for March 4th. I will say that I've been interviewed before by the Allegheny County Bar Association. That was for Commonwealth Court, where I was rated recommended for the appellate court.
Thanks. Can you tell us about your involvement with the Women's Law Project?
Sure. I was on the board for a number of years, and then I was chair of the board. And just like any board member, what we do is support the organization so that it can operate, so that it can function and run. And being that it was like many organizations, we would consider it small, but I would say, we're like the kitten that looks in the mirror. We're a big lion, actually. We look in the mirror, we see a lion, because the organization really punches above its weight with the activity that it does. And so as a board member, I was there to help raise the funds to support the organization, to help the staff as I could and as needed, just to make sure that the organization could operate and provide services to the community. It's a really great organization.
Thanks. You talked a bit about temperament. Can you talk more about the temperament that makes an effective judge?
The temperament that makes an effective judge would be someone, like I say, the foundation has to be treating people with dignity and respect, because people are owed due process. That's what we're built on, due process, not the process that we believe that they might be due because of what we perceive about them. And so a good judge is going to treat them respectfully, listen fully to people, because if the judge does not do that, then the judge is going to be making decisions that could basically impact people's lives going forward. And the judge would be doing that with only maybe half the information, because the judge has not taken the time to fully listen and give people that dignity and that respect. And
Thank
also, I
you.
think making sure that people understand the reasons that decisions are being made. Because some people can often live with a decision even if they disagree with it, as long as they understand it. So I think taking the time to make sure people understand what's going on will just be so helpful to the process.
We've got about 30 seconds left. Could you share thoughts about freedom of religion versus freedom from religion?
Ooh. Uh, freedom of religion, that being your choice to praise, worship, or not to praise or worship whoever you want. Freedom from religion is what I think our country is built on, and that is to be free of the government telling us who we should worship and how we should worship and when we should worship. Everyone makes that decision for themselves.
Thanks so much for your time tonight, Amanda. We appreciate it. We're going to move forward now and bring Craig Stevens to the screen.
Thank you.
Yes, Craig. Sorry, go ahead and turn your camera back on, and now you can go. Craig?
Craig, for the sake of time, if you're having trouble with your phone, feel free, if you're unmuted, feel free to take 3 minutes and introduce yourself to us, even if your screen's not on.
Well, they did 10 last week, right? Who? 10 people last week and 10.
Okay, we are looking in the room for our last candidate, Craig Stevens. If you are here, please turn your camera on or unmute and let us know.
If we can give Craig another minute or two, I'd like to just take this moment in time to thank everybody who's worked on making these two meetings happen so well. Janet Lundy is like the wizard behind the curtain. She has really done an incredible job of keeping all this afloat. And Rebecca Weiss has been right there with her. The two of them have been bringing people in and out, making them hosts so that they can speak. And it's gone relatively smoothly tonight. Went incredibly smoothly last time. And they've done a great job behind the scenes. And Leanne has just been a terrific moderator for us. It is not easy to scan the questions, keep track of who's in the room, be able to pose the questions, and try and capture everything that people wanted to have asked. And I think she's done a tremendous job. I also wanted to remind people that if you go to 14th Ward Democratic Committee on YouTube, you'll bring up our channel. And on our channel, you can view last week's meeting with 14 candidates. And by tomorrow, we'll have tonight's meeting up there. It'll be up there tomorrow with the 8 candidates who are speaking tonight. And I found it because I was busy like doing things on our last week meeting, like reaching out to candidates and things. It was incredibly helpful to be able to go back and kind of review for me the various candidates, make sure I remembered who said what, kind of what was the thrust of each candidate's presentation. And it really helped me think about and sort of make my decision. So I really urge you to just take a few minutes before the 9th of March to go and look at those 2 videos. It will really be helpful. I think it is not, with 22 candidates, it's very hard to think about who you think are the 8 people you want to vote for. I'm going to stop now and see if we have Craig, if he has been able to come back in. Is he back in, Janet?
I think that we had an iPhone come back in just a few seconds ago. And at this point, Janet, I think that you should unmute both iPhones and we can just talk to the people who are there and find out if one of them is Craig.
Hello.
Craig.
Okay.
Yes. Can you hear me?
All right. We can hear you, Craig.
Great.
We're going to give you 3 minutes to introduce yourself. We don't want to get you all tied up with trying to get your screen on. If you can, that's great. But if you can't, that's okay. We can hear you.
Okay. I'm trying to start my video. If you can unmute the video.
You should be able to now.
Okay.
There we go. All right, Craig, you've got 3 minutes to tell us about yourself.
Great. Thank you. I'm sorry. I was at a library in another meeting. I was in a bad reception. I apologize. My name is Craig Stevens, and I'm one of the candidates for the Court of Common Pleas. Tell you a little bit about myself. I currently serve as a magisterial district judge. I was elected in 2015 and reelected in 2021. I serve the areas of Scott Township, the borough of Braintree, and the borough of Heidelberg. I also cover different jurisdictions throughout Allegheny County. I've probably covered over 100 communities throughout the county, volunteering to cover different courts, magisterial district courts. I also cover Pittsburgh Municipal Court probably 2-3 days a week, working a lot of night court as well. Prior to becoming a district judge, I was an attorney for Allegheny County. For nearly 20 years, I worked in the Allegheny County Law Department as an assistant county solicitor. I was assigned to the family division and handled primarily CYF, children, youth, and families, handling children that were cases where children that were abused and neglected. Also, I handled child support matters with the county as a solicitor, establishment of child support, and child support contempt hearings. I also handled matters in the civil division, civil litigation, in real estate tax matters. I was the attorney for the Allegheny County Ethics Commission, handling complaints filed against covered employees in Allegheny County under the County Ethics Code. I also handled mental health commitment hearings for Allegheny County as a solicitor, extensively handling other matters, election court, unemployment compensation hearings. Prior to being an attorney for the county, I was also an elected official for Scott Township. I was a commissioner for 20 years, actually in conjunction with my service with Allegheny County. I served as also as a Democratic committee person in my area, Scott Township, for several years. I'm married with 2 children, and my son goes to Pitt, my daughter goes to Duquesne. I am highly recommended by the Allegheny County Bar Association.
You've got about 20 seconds left if you have something else you want to say.
I'm running for judge because of my commitment to public service. I also volunteer on various nonprofit boards. Every Sunday I work with One Hood in passing out food to the unhoused and those that are in need of clothing. Thank you.
Thanks for taking the time to introduce yourself. You've already told us about your bar association. Could you remind us, or your bar association rating? Could you remind us just one more time for folks who might have missed it?
Yes, I am highly recommended by the Allegheny County Bar Association.
Your questionnaire says that you haven't always been a Democrat, and there is a question in the chat asking you to discuss that.
Yes, in 2008, I joined the Democratic Party. My values had been changing for several years, and I finally officially changed to become a registered Democrat. I joined the local Democratic committee in Scott Township. I was also then elected as a Democratic committee man for Allegheny County. I worked on numerous campaigns, President Obama's campaign, numerous judicial campaigns, state representative, state Senate campaigns, volunteering and canvassing and working the polls and putting signs up and helping the Democratic Party. So I'm proud that I'm now a proud Democrat, and I will die a Democrat.
Could you tell us your thoughts about what freedom of religion looks like?
Freedom of religion, obviously, under the Constitution, there is the free exercise clause. So I think that has to be obviously adhered to in conjunction with the Establishment Clause. Freedom of religion allows people to, in my opinion, allows people to freely exercise their religious beliefs without interference, from the government or from any other forces that try to restrict people's beliefs and the right to worship where they want and when they want.
Next question is, what do you think is the most significant problem in Pennsylvania's judicial system?
Well, I think one of the problems that I see in my experience as an attorney and district judge is the process, the length of time it takes sometimes to try cases or to get cases through the system, because you have victims that are impacted and witnesses, and cases get old and cases get stale. And I know cases are delayed continuously by either the prosecution or the defense. And that's one of the things that I've become frustrated with as a district judge. Cases that have been continued repeatedly under no control of the court, and under the Rule 600, the defense obviously lets the time toll. So that's one of the problems that I see. I'd like to see that streamlined better, and that is very frustrating because of there are other the victims and witnesses that are involved in that.
Thanks. Another question here, and we have just under a minute. Under what conditions would you refuse to sign a search warrant?
I would refuse to sign a search warrant if it, first of all, there wasn't probable cause to sign it from a reliable source. We have to rely on the four corners, and we have to rely on the affiant. That's why they swear to the search warrant that they have information that is credible, either firsthand information or information from a reliable source. There are search warrants that I have not signed because I don't believe that there's probable cause to sign it. There's no nexus between, searching a vehicle and marijuana that might be in somebody's house, something of that nature.
Great, thanks. About 20 seconds. Tell us the temperament that you think makes an effective judge.
I think the temperament that makes an effective judge, and I practice is to treat everybody fairly, treat everyone with respect, and a good judge does exhibit those traits, and I try to do that. Thank you.
Great, thanks. You know what, Craig, there's a question we've been asking everyone, and so I'm going to take moderator's privilege to ask you. What is your preferred initial court assignment?
I think I'd like to go to the family division. I have experience in the family division dealing with, children, youth, and families, and dealing with child support, paternity matters. I do have.
Okay.
Thank
you so much for that. Thanks for your time tonight. I'm going to bring Liz, our leader, forward here, or ask for Liz to come forward. We appreciate you taking the time here tonight.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you to all of our candidates tonight. It has been another good night of really hearing from candidates and giving us good information to think about and work with. And my last reminder is to, if you want to review what you've heard tonight, please think about going to the 14th Ward Democratic Committee YouTube channel, where you'll be able to review what you've heard tonight, as well as all the candidates who spoke last week. Thank you. We all have a lot of hard choices to make to narrow a field of 22 down to 8. So thanks again, everybody. Thanks to Leanne, another superb job.
If I could offer one thought, share that video link with your friends. We need to make sure everyone we know is informed about these candidates.
Thanks, Leanne. And
Have a good
thanks,
night.
Janet and Becca behind the scenes. Another great night. Thank you. All right. Bye-bye now.